Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a glorious new installment of Let's Talk Movies. And before we get deep diving into this one, there are a few things that are begging to be addressed. Firstly, yes, I grew a mustache. It is beautiful, isn't it? I mean,
and the goatee.
I know. Now, this is a special seasonal event type thing, so you're not going to be seeing the mustache every episode. So I would recommend basking in the glory of it while you have the chance. Go ahead, take a screenshot so that you can save it forever. Another thing that we need to address, there's been a scandal and a tragedy that has happened. There are multiple episodes of Let's Talk Movies that have been lost. Actually, three because of Oppenheimer.
Oh, yes. And that one,
that have been lost. We filmed these episodes while the RAM storage on my computer was still full. And so they have been lost to history. Oppenheimer episode, although that's a separate issue. Troy episode. And Gladiator episode.
We were like halfway
and we filmed the Gladiator episode with Gavin and Grant. So I know.
So with Troy, we filmed the whole thing and okay, we've done it. We're gonna post it whenever. And then Gladiator, we get halfway through it we had guests on that one, like we had promised y'all, and they will return to actually finish it up. But we got halfway through it and it wasn't recording. And then we realized that Troy also didn't record, and it was like...
Oppenheimer was a whole separate thing. Y'all might have noticed
that's a technological issue.
We did post our teaser for Oppenheimer, and the reason that is because I filmed the whole thing on my phone, and it got uploaded to the cloud, so now it won't even play. Now that one, with some finagling, might be salvageable.
Yeah, we're sure.
However, the other two episodes are lost forever to history until we can reshoot them.
We are planning to get together with Gavin again, who you know from the Braveheart episode, to do Troy with us, and that should be coming at some point. And then we'll get together with Grant and Gavin, the brothers, and finish up do the Gladiator podcast again. Because we were having a real fun time doing it.
We did have a really fun time.
And it was unfortunate, but we're going to come back with it, and it'll be
so having put all of that behind us, I know that there's going to have to be a mourning period, but for now we must brave onward. And John and I have got a special episode for you today. Today we're going to be talking about Valkyrie, which is fast becoming a genre that we tackle, which is World War II movies from the German perspective. This is the second movie that we've covered on this topic. Now, if you remember Downfall, which is the first one, I think it's worth drawing some comparisons here between this movie. A similarity, obviously, is the premise, but some differences include the fact that this is not a German-made film. This is an American film starring Tom Cruise, among others, and this is set mostly before the events. There would be a small amount of overlap, but mostly before the events of Downfall. So if you remember that episode, we're about to tackle the events that are leading up to that movie.
From the German side.
The basic premise of this movie is that there is a coup going on to try... Oh, you want to do it? Sure, go ahead.
I mean, usually I do.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll do the premise first. So yeah, this movie, like he was about to say, is about the whole plot centers around the famous, or I guess it's not famous because a lot of people probably haven't heard of it, but very courageous and very bold coup that was that several German that a group of German military officers and politicians tried to enact or whatever against Hitler. The movie's main character is Klaus von Stauffen. I think his name's Klaus von Stauffenberg, and he's played by Tom Cruise, of course, the legend, and he's the main character of the movie, and he is this general. He's in colonel, and he is in North Africa, and he's become very disillusioned with Hitler and Hitler's Germany, Nazi Germany, and so he gets wounded in a battle by when these Allied planes strafe the camp, and he gets his eyeball. He loses one of his eyes, and he loses one of his arms, or the bottom part of his arm, his forearm, and he goes back to Germany and. his disillusionment grows, and he eventually joins this group of, like I said, of politicians and military men who are conspiring against Hitler and wanting to overthrow Hitler. And they put von Stauffenberg in charge of the coup, at least the military aspect of the coup, and he leads the operation, which becomes known as Operation Valkyrie. It's termed that because the plan in the movie and in real life was to was to assassinate Hitler and then use his Valkyrie plan to take control of the government. And his Valkyrie plan was like a safe measure against really a safe measure against a coup, but they turn it against Hitler by making it look like the SS is going to take over, is revolting against Hitler. And so they kind of like twist Hitler's own plan, and this is how they seek to overthrow Hitler's Hitler and Hitler's regime.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then the movie
it takes place in a wide span between 1943 and 1945.
Yeah. There's some scenes at the beginning that are kind of in 1943. And then for the specs, this movie was directed by a guy named Bryan Singer. He's done a good bit of stuff. He did some of the X-Men movies. He did a really good movie back in the day called The Usual Suspects, and he did he's done some other stuff. He did the movie about Queen, came out a few years ago, called Bohemian Rhapsody. Anyway, pretty well-known director. But this was kind of one of his only movies that delves into like the historical genre, which is interesting, and I think he did a pretty good job, and we can talk about that later. It was written by Nathan Alexander and Christopher McQuarrie. That guy is the dude who has written and directed the past like 4 Mission Impossible movies. So he didn't direct this one, but he did co-write the movie. And he also served as a producer. He co-produced it with Gilbert Adler and Bryan Singer, the director. As we've already mentioned, of course, this movie stars Tom Cruise as von Stauffenberg. It also has some other big names. Kenneth Branagh plays one of the conspirators. Bill Nighy, who plays one of the conspirators. He's famous, obviously, for playing Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean. Nate didn't know that, but I pointed it out.
Well,
obviously, you wouldn't know from his face.
It's hard to recognize him. I mean, like...
Or his voice. He's pretty completely different. And then it's Tom Wilkinson, who he plays this guy named Fromm, who is a high-ranking military officer who's in command of the Reserve Army, and he's key to their plan to overthrow Hitler. And he's played
a total weakling, though.
Yeah. Anyway, Tom Wilkinson is also free.
Oh, we're still good.
Anyway, as I was saying, Tom Wilkinson plays Friedrich Fromm, and he actually was in The Patriot. He played what's the general? Cornwallis. He played Cornwallis in The Patriot, and I bet you might have recognized it. He's pretty recognizable.
From the redcoats to the Nazis.
And then a couple other co-stars. Carice Van Houten, Thomas Kretschmann, and Terrence Stamp. And then there's a lot of other people who
send them over that hill and crush them.
Anyway, the cinematography was by a guy named Newton Thomas Siegel. It was edited by John Ottman, who also did the musical score. The production companies were United Artists, Bad Hat Harry Productions, Cruz Wagner Productions, Studio Babelsberg, Motion Pictures. And then it was distributed by 20th Century Fox internationally, and then MGM Distribution Company distributed it in the USA and in Canada. It was released on Christmas Day, 2008. We're filming this on December 28th, so this is just a few days over the 15th anniversary.
Nice! 15th anniversary of Valkyrie. Well done, Valkyrie.
There you go. It runs at just over 2 hours, 121 minutes. 2 hours and 1 minute. So
yeah, I was actually sitting there thinking why couldn't they make it 20 seconds shorter, because it was almost 2 hours exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like,
1 minute over. And it was a co-production between the United States and Germany, but it was. It's not. You're not wrong when you say it's not a full German production.
Yeah,
it is more American.
They speak English.
But there was a German production company on the movie, so I guess technically it was co-produced by Germany. English is the primary language spoken. There's a bit of German at the beginning.
Yeah,
Tom Cruise like speaks in German at the beginning very briefly, but then it like morphs into him speaking English. And I could have sworn that there were subtitles from I remember the last time, but I guess not. It just like you don't really know what he's saying, and then it just all of a sudden he's speaking English. But anyway, this had
kind of introduce it in German and then
which was cool. And this movie had a pretty big budget, $75 to $90 million, but it made $201.5 million. So it made like a lot of it made back its budget and a lot more. Anyway, so with the premise and the movie specs kind of out of the way, I guess we can go ahead and get into positives and negatives.
Yeah, you
can go first. What's your biggest positive?
Oh well, I love historical movies like this, man. This is a really good one. I think the plot of this movie was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that whoever wrote the script did a really good job.
Christopher McQuarrie.
And
some other guy. I forgot his name.
Yeah, Christopher McQuarrie and some other guy did a really good job.
All right, now we gotta get his name, bro.
I think that the script...
Nathan Alexander.
I think the script took itself very seriously.
Yep.
The characters took themselves very seriously. The actors turned in performances that were, for the most part, very measured, which I appreciate because that makes them seem like real men in real situations. You know, unfortunately, we are seeing this movement in Hollywood right now to characters that are like emotionally out of control and running around and screaming, like especially men. You know, because that's you know, traditionally you see more emotional outbursts out of women, and I think that this movie does a great job of tampering that down a little bit and getting back to some serious acting from some serious actors. And like I said, the plot, which is my point really in this whole thing, was really tight. They knew how to do a really good job of keeping the tension up, especially in key moments. And you could tell that they leaned a lot on history to fill in the gaps instead of inventing stuff. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm a scholar in this area. I like the medieval period more. However, they did a good job of not inventing stuff out of thin air and just being careless with obvious historical facts. So the plot would be my...
Yeah, so you mentioned the tension. That's my biggest positive. I love how this movie builds up the tension, like, throughout the whole movie. Like, even at the beginning, like, it's pretty tense. Like, it's just, like, this guy, like, he does not like Germany. Like, he's not... No, he loves Germany. He does not like the guy who's in charge of Germany, and he just has this will to and want to, like, overthrow him. And then the tension builds as he actually joins the conspiracy, and it's like, okay, like, he's in. Now he needs to, like... get it done. They need to get it done, and there's all this tension within the conspiracy between the politicians who are a little bit more cautious, and some of the military guys too are kind of cautious, especially a guy named Ulbricht, who is like we can get into him in a minute, but there's a lot of tension between the politicians and the military people, specifically von Stauffenberg. And it just works. So it really works well for the movie because they all want to work together, and like they're all have the same motive and have the same goal, but they have different ways of going of achieving it. And I think it really also highlights the like different kind of characterizations of each of the different characters, because like each character has their own kind of view on how they should do things, and it works really well, and it gives it kind of the movie a good nuance there. And then the tension obviously builds even more once they start executing the conspiracy and the assassination attempt, which unfortunately fails, if we didn't already mention that. But
I mean, like you knew that.
Yeah,
you knew that the Soviets found Hitler.
Especially because you watched our review.
I know, exactly. So you know that Hitler doesn't die.
Anyway, but the tension continues to build, and it amps up to a peak whenever Tom Cruise, von Stauffenberg, goes into the Wolf's lair and plants the bomb and escapes. And there's this really great tension-filled scene where he's at the checkpoint. He doesn't know if he's going to get through, and he kind of tricks the guy into letting him through, and and then obviously the last 30 minutes of this movie is very, like, the pace is very nice, but it's very tension filled. Like, it's just like, are they gonna pull it off? Because I love how they show us the different perspectives. You have the perspective of von Stauffenberg and his people who were like convinced Hitler died. Then we kind of know he didn't already because it showed us a shot of the dude, the inside man, kind of knew that Hitler didn't die, and he actually never told him that he did die, and so we know that Hitler didn't die. And so we're kind of like, oh man, because it's going to fail. I mean, it's going to fail because we know it didn't work in real life. But at the same time, you're like, just within the movie, you're like, this isn't going to work out. And the tension just builds and builds and builds until obviously it peaks really when Hitler calls the guy on the phone and is like, I want these guys taken alive. And then you're like, all right, it's over. And, so yeah, the tension was really well done in this movie. So yeah, the director, Bryan Singer, did a really good job with that. And it was critical to the movie because it's a movie about a conspiracy to kill like the most notorious dictator of all time, it seems like. And so tension was important. You wanted to have that. So that's my biggest positive.
Yeah. Next, I'm going to talk about the production design. And by the way, y'all might have noticed that the audio quality is down this time. We don't have the microphone, unfortunately. We're going to work on that. I'm going to work on that. John's going to work on the light.
Yeah, we have a lighting set up.
So we're gonna look better soon. But anyhow, I'm going to give kudos to whoever was in charge of the production design for this movie because all of the actors were outfitted in the best looking Nazi uniforms you'd ever see. It's funny because I've had to work with this sort of thing with Nazi uniforms when I did a play called The Lions of Trondheim. I did it twice, once on a bigger scale, and there was a huge thing about the Nazi uniforms. And
you played a Nazi.
I did play a Nazi, but I didn't play a Nazi. I played a Nazi collaborator. I was actually a Norwegian guy.
Oh, okay. You were a sympathizer.
Yeah, I was a spy, actually. But in this play, we were having a hard time figuring out the uniforms, and we ended up having a collector bring in these real SS uniforms. It was really cool. Anyhow, I relate with this struggle because of that experience, and the creators did a phenomenal job. They went to great lengths to make the whole thing incredibly immersive. I was thinking about shots that they had, these big old planes that they had. I didn't see any tanks, but
no, there was one tank. I don't know, in the background.
That was an armored vehicle. That's not quite a tank.
A big thing coming up.
Yeah, but the unfortunate reality is that there is only one functional Tiger 131 left in the world, and it's in London. Yeah, it's in Fury. That's the Tiger tank. Yeah, that's the last
they
functional
Tiger.
Yes,
that's wild.
They did. So that you can't really be that much of a stickler because of that. They did have cars and motorcycles and the whole hundreds of men armed. When they brought up the reserve army, there were hundreds of Nazis. They even had this shot of this, the reserve army commander. He was swimming in this pool, and there was this mural painted on the underside of the swastika, and it's like, dang, you drained that whole pool and painted that whole swastika on there. Yeah. That's really impressive. I don't know where they shot this, but the buildings looked amazing. The buildings looked amazing. The costumes looked amazing. The firearms looked amazing. Whenever they shot, it looked amazing. They
filmed in Berlin.
It's a interesting dynamic because all of the actors are British, so it is kind of funny in that regard. Mm-hmm. If I were a German person, if I were a German person, I would find the whole thing very funny. It'd be like if the if the Russians made a movie about the American Civil War or something, and they had the accent the whole time. You'd be like, this is just hilarious. Yeah. So I mean, that's not really a negative. It's just a thought.
You're asking where they filmed. They filmed in Berlin for the Berlin scenes.
That makes sense.
So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
And then they filmed, it says, the Wolfslayer scenes where they try to assassinate Hitler. That was filmed in northeastern Poland. Mm. And then, they filmed in some other areas, but those are two of the primary sites.
That's where it would have been. They called it Prussia.
Yeah,
which is a more ancient kingdom, but that's like a modern day.
Yeah, Poland. They talk about the East Prussia.
Yeah, but
I agree. The production design.
The production quality was off the charts.
Yeah. So. Ditto on everything he said because I think my favorite production aspect of the production was like the buildings,
Mm.
like the government quarter and like the SS.
The production design on this movie
really
was actually better than that of Downfall.
And obviously you have all the swastika flags that obviously you got to have those if you're making a movie set in Nazi Berlin or Nazi Germany. And the uniforms, I mean, obviously you talked about it. Did they look pretty pretty authentic,
for sure. That was like really well researched.
Yeah. So my second biggest positive is I really like the acting, and you mentioned it a little bit in the kind of
I did mention that a little bit, yeah.
But I really love the performances of a few people in this movie. Tom Cruise is really good in this movie. It's not like Last Samurai level Tom Cruise, but I don't think the movie is like that caliber of a movie as Last Samurai to like enable him to give that type of performance. It's a totally different type of performance, obviously. But I love his performance. He really does a good job at like portraying this guy who loves his country but like hates the people who are like in charge of it. And I love how he brings out those themes of like, and him and other characters he specifically brings out the theme of like, you know, we have to do the right thing. Like people can't remember us all as part of this whole, you know, Nazi regime. Like we need to show that. The line in the movie, we need to show the world that we're not all like him. He doesn't say that, von Stauffenberg, but he embodies that whole thing. Like, speaking of that line, the guy who says that line, I don't know, I'm forgetting his name, but he's played by Kenneth Branagh, and he's one of the conspirators, and he also does a great job at just embodying that ideal, like in the way he talks and like the way his mannerisms, and he's all the actors are very serious, obviously, because it's a very serious movie. And I just love most of the performances. There's no performance in the movie that stood out as weird. Even the woman who played his wife like gave a really good emotional performance. Like there's several emotional scenes where they're like hugging and stuff, and obviously there's the scene where when she's leaving, and obviously she never got to see him again. And she just gives a real good emotional performance, you know, and she really looks like she's like about to break down. Like it's legitimately good acting there. And finally, my favorite character in the movie, honestly, is the bald-headed guy. This guy is like down for the struggle. Like he like is like, let's just do this. And one of my favorite lines in the movie is when they're like, should we do it on the first try? They don't end up doing it, but he's like, I say do it. And it's like, yeah.
I love how he says, this is about Germany, this isn't about you.
Yes. Like, once again, that actor does a great job of just like, with his performance embodying that ideal. But he's just such a cool guy who's just like, he's in it. Like, he's originally just like the bomb technician, and he ends up being like one of the most like the hardiest of them all, you know, and the most eager to like succeed. And one final thing about the acting, and just this kind of goes into themes a little bit as well, but I love how von Stauffenberg like wants success. Like some of them, I talked about how they each have, all the members of the conspiracy kind of have different ideas, and some of them are like, we just need to do it, whether it succeeds or not, it's just a symbol. But von Stauffenberg brings this kind of attitude of like, you know, we need to do it like the right way so we can succeed. We don't just need to, you know, kill him and then like, oh, if they'll still be in power. We need to find a way to actually seize power, and like in a way that will actually work. Unfortunately, it obviously doesn't work out, but you know, it was as good of a plan as any. And I really think Tom Cruise just was a really good guy to play the leader of the conspiracy. Really, I mean, he wasn't officially the leader, but he's basically the leader in spirit.
No, he was officially the leader.
Oh yeah, I guess it did make him officially the leader, but you know, definitely the leader in spirit as well. And he was just great in the part, you know. There's just nothing more I can really say about it. But yeah, the acting was really good in this movie.
Yeah. My last positive before we move on into negatives, I'm going to talk about the message of this movie, which I think is very, not only noble, but it was well presented. Mm-hmm. This movie wanted to impart you with the morals of the story, not through preaching or sort of banging you over the head with the message. It just told the story in a really good way, and it lets the real courage of these men bleed through the pages of history to affect you. You know, I think that wonderful lessons that we can take, there's obviously courage. I think that this is also a bite back to all of those who would say that, like, nationalism is horrible ideology, and then would point to the Nazis and say, and here's why. You can really see nationalism working in the hearts of these men to try to drain out the Nazi regime, because they all loved Germany, they all loved their country, and especially for von Stauffenberg, that's exactly why he did this. Was because he wanted to see his country become great again. He saw himself as serving, and this really is embodied by his final line whenever he's like,
That's like the catch line of their whole conspiracy.
"Long live sacred Germany" is his last line.
And he like yells it loud.
It's because he believes that, you know, Germany has been taken over by this hostile force, which it was.
Yeah.
You know, we all could do well to learn a thing or two from these Germans, which is something that is not you know, culturally appropriate to say these days, but it's true nonetheless. And I think that for all of those who've been brought up in Germany in this sort of state of shame because of their history should look to these men as the backbone of their ancestry to look upon with pride. You know, it alludes to in the movie that there's a memorial now, and I think that this is the ancestors that the German people should look to rebuild their pride in the years going forward. I think this is a story that deserved to be told, and it's really it's not a movie that couldn't be made today, unfortunately, but under the political climate of 2008, fortunately it could be made, and I hope that its message continues to get out.
Yeah, so my third, I'm gonna mesh a few positives in here because but I really liked the music in this movie. It hit me more this time. I didn't really remember it standing out the last time, but I really do like the musical score, especially in the scenes with von Stauffenberg and his wife. There's some really good kind of like piano melodies playing, and I really liked that. And obviously in the tension-filled scenes, it's just kind of some really good music to go along with that tension. And a couple other things. The cinematography was really good in this movie, especially the scenes in the air, like when they're flying. Like, I always think that's cool, like when they're able to shoot scenes of planes in the air. Like, yeah, it's just cool. And in this movie, it looks really realistic, and the shots really jump off the screen at you. But obviously, there's all kinds of other great shots in this movie. But my third, like, big positive would be really the pacing of the movie. It moves like Nate mentioned. It's a very tight, kind of a tight story and a tight script. You know, it's not like
very focused,
over long. It's really right. There's the proper length, and the movie begins, and you're thrown into the world of this colonel who's disillusioned with his country's leadership, and then it just moves at this nice pace. He joins the conspiracy. They make their plan. They try to execute the assassination. It fails, or they don't actually send off the bomb. Then they try again. It works, and then we're into kind of this. All right, here we go. We gotta like get the plan going. And like I said, there's all the tension that's building up throughout all of this, and then it ends on a good note. Like it ends on a proper note with like a little memorial to the guys at the end, you know, with there's a quote, and but the pacing of the whole movie, like there's not a point in the movie where it really slows down to like a halt. Like it's either them planning the conspiracy or showing like or executing the conspiracy, then it's them, you know, trying to like do all they can to survive and get out of the city, which unfortunately they can't. And you know, the pacing is very good. Another little thing I like about this movie is they have Hitler like talk. Like, I don't know, there was the thing, like, Hitler, like, doesn't talk a lot in movies, other than, obviously, Downfall, because he's, like, the main character. It seems like that's, like, kind of taboo to have Hitler, like, speak, and in the movie, he, like, speaks, like, several times, and it's just, like, the guy who played him did a good job, and his voice is just very, like, ominous, and it's, like, kind of just creepy when he speaks, you know, and I really enjoyed that, and, yeah, it was just cool. He just has that presence, like, you know, obviously, because we know who he is, but, like, I don't know. His presence in the movie is well done, and they used the character of Hitler very well. He's not just like this guy who's off there. Like you actually do get to see him. You get to go to his house, and it's pretty cool. And that's just a little side note. But yeah, so those are all my big positives for me. So you want to move on to
let's roll on to
this one might be like the nitpick section.
Yeah, well, actually going to disagree with John on a couple things in my negatives here. I'm going to start by saying that I didn't like the music in this movie very much.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because I can't remember what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was paying full attention to this movie. It's not like I had one eye on my phone the whole time. I can't remember what any of it sounds like, and so if that's an indicator to me that the music was not. It wasn't. I don't even remember music playing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of remember the piano melody that John was referring to during that really emotional scene with his wife, and that's kind of it. I mean, on the other hand,
when they're being exexecuted, there's that.
When they're being executed. But like on the other hand, on the other side of the coin, it's a movie that doesn't need music a ton. It does. It does well without it. A lot of the movie is pretty quiet, and I actually appreciate that to a certain extent. But
definitely not like blaring in your face.
Yeah, and I actually would appreciate it more being quiet versus the music blaring in your face.
Yeah, me too.
But
I do appreciate that.
I do think it's kind of a weak score, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't think it's like, just to clarify, I don't think it's like outstanding. I just like, I enjoyed what it was. Like, you know, it wasn't like on caliber with like Braveheart score or like the Patriot. It wasn't a great
score in my opinion. But I mean, again, it didn't need an amazing score for me to enjoy it. And that's just a thought.
Yeah,
so, do you have a negative?
One of my, I mean, I have very few nitpicks on this movie. I will say, I wish that. I mean, do you have another one?
I do, yeah. Okay, go ahead. I do have another one. And this is another disagreement with John, and it's just that I did not like the guy that played Hitler that much. Okay. Like, they doctored him up to make him look like Hitler, but the guy that they casted did not naturally look like Hitler. His nose was, like, so long. Okay. I don't know why that bothered me so much, but I was like, Hitler's nose is not that big, and his voice didn't. I'll say this: I liked Bruno Ganz a lot more as Hitler. Bruno Ganz, what was he, like a Swedish actor or something?
Yeah, he's from like Sweden.
He did a great job, in my opinion.
Got a lot more material to work with down. So.
Yeah, well, he did have more material to work with. He had more lines. He had more time. To
I was like, he looked more like him. He
looked more like him. Yeah. And this guy,
kind of that. He had a lot more of the wrinkles on his face.
I don't know what was wrong with this guy's mustache, but it was like too bristly. It looked like he had like a comb on it. And if you see pictures of Hitler, he's got like a very well combed mustache, and this guy's mustache was like attacking people. It was like, I don't know. Obviously, my mustache is much better. Anyhow,
no, I agree. I do agree. I don't think the performance was like that amazing, but I mean, I don't think there was much of a like vocal like there wasn't.
There wasn't a lot.
Not lyrics. There wasn't much dialogue that was given to him.
It just I didn't like.
I liked his presence more than anything.
Well, like, the fact that he was there. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but also just like when they walk into the like his house, like it's kind of even the tension there is like really cool to me. Like he's just like sitting in his chair, and like, every time he moves, it's just kind of.
I like it a lot better than if they had like tried to write him out of the script, like Hitler. I appreciate that he was there. I appreciate that he was there, and the movie is definitely better for him being there because like he's the guy they're trying to murder. He's gotta be there at some point, and they could have taken the easy way out and been like, let's try to write him out of the script as much as possible. Yeah, but they didn't do that, and I appreciated that. Yeah. However, I would have not have gone with that casting choice. I don't know who that was.
I don't think it was anybody.
But he sounded like way too American, and
he was one of the people who actually had an accent in the movie, like of the German people.
And that's another thing you could nitpick because, and I don't like when this happens. And like whenever I referred to this already once, but whenever I did the Lions of Trondheim the first time, which this is a story, just for context, about the Norwegian resistance to Nazi occupation. And so the first time I did it in Greenville, South Carolina, and it was mandated. Everybody had to learn the accent, and everybody had to do the accent, which was the Norwegian accent. And it was it got people invested. It was very believable, I think. Yeah. And by the end, I remember I left, and I was thinking in a Norwegian accent because I had done it so much, and it really added to it. Now, the second time I did it in Bainbridge, Georgia, and they did not ask people to do the accent. But the funny thing is I was with some performers who had done this before, so they did the accent, and so we had some people who did it and some people who didn't, and it was like mind-numbingly frustrating because and that's what happens in this movie a little bit. I feel like some people took it upon themselves to do the accent, and other people were like, I'll just sound like I'm from London. And
a lot of the German soldiers have the accent. Like, and that, like, the guy who, like, is always picking up Stauffenberg's bag. Like, leave his bag alone. Like, Nate was,
Yeah,
like,
there was that. I'll get to that in just a second.
My favorite, oh, shoot, not really, but my favorite line is like, Kano, your bag? He's like, I could handle this.
And so what I was saying is that I feel like it would have been better if they would have made the artistic decision to either do the accents or not do the accents. Because if you don't do the accents and there's no accents, then you're kind of in the position where it's like, oh, they sort of transitioned out of German. I'm not in German anymore. All right. Yeah. Or we all do the accent and it's like, oh, this is cool. They all sound German. Yeah. But when you do half and half, it's like, wait, so like that guy's German, but that guy's not? Or like, what? How does that even work?
I did read somewhere where they originally all were going to do accents.
Okay.
All the actors. And like even Tom Cruise, and the director said that he wanted them to just not have that be like a burden for them. He wanted them to just like give their best performance without having to worry about an accent. So the director like shut that down.
Yes. Okay. So
that's. And obviously we've raved about the acting. We don't think the acting is phenomenal.
Oh my gosh,
by basically everybody in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree. It would have been cool. Like, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I actually respect that decision that the director made. That's a great decision. However, it wasn't, like, enforced across the board, so some people still did the accent.
Yeah.
And it was, like...
Yeah, like the guy that was swimming was the commander of the reserves.
It was jarring a little bit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, like, I'll mention real quick what John alluded to a second ago, the whole thing with the briefcase. Like, that was fine. Yeah. That was...
Come on, your bag.
So basically, to give you context, he had the bag...
Explain the situation.
He had the bag with the bomb in it, and so the tension was around whether or not he could deliver it. And so I get they needed things to go wrong, but they had, like, the same thing going wrong over and over again, where somebody would pick up his bag. It's like, oh, there goes his bag again. Yeah. And then, like, they would have to invent these outlandish situations. He's like, I'll take your bag. It's like, just let the man carry his bag. Nobody is that aggressive with, like, trying to take people's bags.
The first time especially, like, they were really fooling her. The first time he literally just leaves the room and then they take it, like, he doesn't know where it is. And the guy's just standing there, Connell, your bag.
They have all the characters look at the bag like they know what's in it. They're like,
and then it just disappears, like the camera. It was a pretty cool shot when the camera's moving. It just moves past and just.
Now on the flip side, it did provide some tension. Like when the bag disappeared and the guy who was panicking, he's like, oh my god, where's the bag?
Yeah, no,
like it worked, but it was a little overused. Yeah, it was a little overworked. But at the end, you're like, oh, they took his bag again.
The second time, it's the same exact like thing. Like that same guy carries the same like colonel. Is like or not colonel, whatever major, whatever his rank is. It carries the guy's bag, von Stauffenberg's bag. And he's like, I can handle this.
Like if you went to a business meeting and some random guy's bag got messed with as many times as this guy did, you'd be like, why is everyone touching his bag? Just leave the man's bag alone. Like, even when he would set it down, people would, like, rearrange it for him. And it's like, why did you do that?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. My nitpick... I agree with the nitpick on the accent, or whatever you want to call it. A nitpick, I guess, that they could have done the accents, but it would have been cool for me.
Yeah, like, well, it's cool. Again, it's a nitpick, but my thought is that either it should have been all accents or no accents.
My nitpick is really the character of Fromm was. I never really understood. They didn't do the best job in explaining why he was like, whether his role in the whole thing. So this is the guy who. If you watch the movie, he's the commander of the reserve army. They need him to like activate Valkyrie, and he never really indicated.
We lost it, bro.
Okay, there it is.